Grace Anderson found the note tucked into her scrubs pocket halfway through her shift at Mercy General Hospital. 27. Grace had been a pediatric nurse for 5 years, specializing in the children's cancer ward. It was heartbreaking work that paid modestly, but Grace had never considered doing anything else. She'd lost her younger brother to leukemia when she was 15, and she'd spent every day since trying to be the kind of nurse who'd comforted her family during the worst time of their lives. The note was written in crayon on a piece of construction paper, clearly by a child. Dear Nurse Grace, asterisk, please visit our daddy for Christmas. He is very lonely since Mommy went to heaven. We try to make him happy, but he is always sad. The doctor said Daddy needs someone to take care of his heart. We think you'd be good at that because you take care of everybody's hearts. Our daddy is Alexander Sterling, and he works in the big building downtown. Please help him not be lonely anymore. Love, Emma, Lily, and Sophie Sterling. We are triplets, and we are 6. Grace recognized the names immediately. Emma, Lily, and Sophie were frequent visitors to the children's ward, not as patients, thankfully, but as volunteers. Their father, Alexander Sterling, had established a generous donation fund for the hospital after his wife died of cancer 3 years ago. The triplets would come with their nanny once a month to deliver toys and spend time with the young patients, spreading joy with a maturity that seemed impossible for 6-year-olds. Grace had interacted with them several times and had been struck by how sweet and well-behaved they were, but also by the sadness that sometimes clouded their young faces. They talked about their mother often, about how much they missed her, about how their daddy worked all the time now and was always tired. Now she held a note from 3 little girls asking her to help their father not be lonely. Grace should have ignored it. It was inappropriate, crossing professional boundaries. And Alexander Sterling was a CEO, wealthy, powerful, and completely out of her league. He probably had assistants to manage his social life and certainly didn't need a pediatric nurse showing up uninvited. But it was 3 days before Christmas, and Grace kept thinking about those 3 little girls who were worried enough about their father to write a note asking a stranger for help. She thought about her own father after her brother died, how he'd worked obsessively to avoid his grief, how their family had almost fallen apart before her mother staged an intervention. Grace made a decision that defied all logic and professional sense. She looked up Sterling Enterprises' address, bought a small gift basket with homemade cookies and a card, and on Christmas Eve afternoon, she went to the downtown office tower, hoping to catch Alexander Sterling before he left for the holiday. The building was mostly empty, security waving her through when she explained she had a delivery from Mr. Sterling. She took the elevator to the top floor, her heart pounding, suddenly realizing how ridiculous this was. She was a nurse showing up uninvited at a CEO's office on Christmas Eve because his daughters had left her a note. The reception's desk was empty, but she could see light coming from an office at the end of the hall. Grace walked toward it, her courage faltering with every step. Through the open door, she saw him. Alexander Sterling sat at an enormous desk covered in papers, still wearing a suit despite the late hour, looking at his computer screen with an expression of such profound exhaustion and loneliness that Grace's heart ached. He was perhaps in his late 30s, handsome in the way of men who'd forgotten to notice their own appearance, with dark hair that needed cutting and shadows under his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. He hadn't noticed her standing in the doorway, completely absorbed in whatever work he was using to avoid going home to an empty house on Christmas Eve. Grace knocked gently. Mr. Sterling. Alexander looked up, confusion crossing his face. Yes. I'm sorry. I think everyone's gone home for the holiday. If you're looking for someone, I'm looking for you, actually. My name is Grace Anderson. I'm a pediatric nurse at Mercy General. Your daughters left me a note. She held up the construction paper, suddenly feeling foolish. They asked me to visit you because they're worried you're lonely. So here I am. Merry Christmas. Alexander stared at her, processing this information. Then his expression shifted from confusion to something that looked like pain mixed with embarrassment. My daughters wrote you a note. About me. I'm so sorry. That's completely inappropriate. They shouldn't have. They love you. They're worried about you. That's not inappropriate. That's being good daughters. Grace stepped into the office, setting the gift basket on his desk. Mr. Sterling, your girls are some of the sweetest children I've ever met. They come to our children's ward and bring joy to kids who are fighting cancer. They talk about their mother with beautiful memories, and they talk about their father with concern, because they can see you're hurting. They're 6 years old, and they wrote a note asking for help because they don't know how else to reach you. Alexander's eyes were suddenly bright with unshed tears. They think I'm lonely, aren't you? The question hung in the air. Alexander looked at Grace Relly, looked at her. For the first time, is something in his carefully maintained composure cracked. Yes, God, yes, I'm lonely. My wife died 3 years ago, and I threw myself into work because it was easier than facing the empty house and the girls who looked so much like her. I thought if I could build the company bigger, make more money, provide more security, somehow that would be enough. But it's not enough. The girls are growing up without really knowing me, and I'm missing it because I'm hiding in this office, pretending quarterly reports matter more than being their father. Grace sat down in the chair across from his desk, uninvited, but somehow right. Your daughters told me their mother used to make Christmas special, cookies and stories and decorating the tree together. They said you haven't decorated a tree since she died, that you worked through Christmas because you don't know how to make it feel right without her. They told you all that. Alexander's voice was rough. They tell me lots of things. When children visit sick kids in the hospital, they talk to the nurses. They trust us. Emma, Lily, and Sophie talk about how much they miss family Christmas. How their nanny is nice, but it's not the same. How they wish their daddy would come home before bedtime sometimes. Grace leaned forward. Mr. Sterling, Alex, please, if my daughters sent you on a mission to rescue their lonely father, the least you can do is call me Alex. Alex, your girls don't need more money or security. They need their father. They need the man who loved their mother enough to create that donation fund in her memory. They need someone to make Christmas feel like Christmas again. That's why they wrote the note. They're 6 years old, and they're trying to save you because they can see you're drowning. Alex put his head in his hands. I don't know how to do this without her. Caroline made everything warm and special. She knew how to make traditions and magic. I'm just a guy who's good at business strategy. I can't fill the hole she left. You're not supposed to fill it. You're supposed to acknowledge it and keep living anyway. For them. For yourself. Grace hesitated, then pulled out her phone. I know this is incredibly forward, and you can absolutely say no. But I don't have any family in town, and I was planning to spend Christmas alone with a book and some takeout. Your daughters asked me to help you not be lonely. So here's my offer. Let me help you make Christmas happen for your girls. I'll come to your house. We'll bake cookies with them, decorate a tree, make it feel like a real Christmas. Not as a replacement for their mother, but as a start toward building new traditions. One night, just to show them their father is trying. Alex looked at her like she'd offered him a lifeline while he was drowning. Why would you do this? You don't know us. This is way beyond any professional obligation, 'cause your daughters asked for help. And I know what it's like to lose someone to cancer and watch your family fall apart from grief. Because I'm a pediatric nurse, and I've seen too many children lose precious time with parents who are physically present, but emotionally absent. Because it's Christmas Eve, and 3 little girls deserve to have their father actually present for once. Grace met his eyes. And because you look exactly like my father looked 3 years after my brother died, drowning in grief and work. Losing connection with the family that needed him. Someone helped him find his way back. Let me help you, Alex agreed. And 2 hours later, Grace found herself at the Sterling Mansion, a beautiful home that felt cold and unlived in despite its expensive furnishings. The triplets were overjoyed when they saw Grace arrive with their father. Nurse Grace, you came to help Daddy. Emma threw her arms around Grace while Lily and Sophie did the same to their father. We asked her to visit you, Daddy, because you're always so sad, Sophie said with 6-year-old directness. We wanted you to have a friend who knows how to make people feel better. You did good, sweetheart, Alex said, his voice thick with emotion. You all did very good. They spent the evening baking cookies, using Caroline's old recipes that Alex had forgotten he still had. The girls talked about their mother naturally, sharing memories, and Grace encouraged it rather than shutting it down. They decorated a tree that had sat in storage for 3 years, using ornaments that each told a story. Mommy made this one, Lily said, holding up a handmade ornament. She made one for each of us the year we were born. Daddy, do you remember? I remember, Alex said softly, taking the ornament and hanging it carefully. Your mother spent weeks making these. She wanted you each to have something special. Tell us the story, Emma prompted, like Mommy used to. And Alex did. He told them about Caroline's excitement when they found out they were having triplets, about her determination to make sure each girl felt individual and special, about the love that had filled their home before cancer took it away. Grace watched this father reconnect with his daughters through stories and traditions, saw the way they bloomed under his attention, and felt something shift in her own heart. This wasn't just about helping grieving children. This was about witnessing a family begin to heal. After the girls went to bed, exhausted and happy, Alex and Grace sat in the living room with the tree lights twinkling. Thank you, Alex said quietly. I didn't realize how much I'd been avoiding until tonight. Avoiding Christmas, avoiding memories of Caroline, avoiding really being present with my daughters, because it hurt too much. You showed me how to remember her with joy instead of just pain. Your daughters did that. I just gave you permission to try. Grace, I know this is strange, and we barely know each other, but I'd like to see you again. Not because my daughters wrote you a note, but because tonight reminded me what it feels like to be alive instead of just surviving. Would you consider having dinner with me after the holidays? As adults, getting to know each other. I'd like that. But Alex, you should know, I'm a pediatric nurse. I work long hours with sick children. I make a modest salary, and I come with a lot of emotional baggage from losing my brother. I'm not Caroline, and I wouldn't try to be. I'm just me. Key, I don't want you to be Caroline. I want you to be the woman who showed up in my office on Christmas Eve because 3 little girls asked for help, who taught me how to make cookies and hang ornaments and remember my wife with love instead of just grief. That's more than enough. They dated carefully over the following months, building a relationship that honored Caroline's memory while creating something new. The triplets adored Grace, not as a mother replacement, but as someone who brought light back into their home. Grace taught Alex how to be present with his daughters, how to balance work with fatherhood, how to create new traditions that acknowledged loss while embracing life. A year after showing up at his office with a gift basket and a note from his daughters, Alex proposed to Grace at the hospital's children's ward, surrounded by the young patients who'd inspired 3 little girls to ask a nurse for help. Grace Anderson, my daughters wrote you a note asking you to help their lonely father. You showed up on Christmas Eve with cookies and compassion and reminded us how to be a family again. You honored Caroline's memory while teaching us how to keep living. You brought Christmas back into our home and light back into our lives. Will you marry me and officially become part of the family you've already transformed? Grace said yes while the children in the ward cheered and the triplets announced. They'd known all along that Nurse Grace was meant to be their new mother. The wedding was 6 months later, during the Christmas season at the hospital, where 3 little girls had left a note. In his vows, Alex spoke words that honored both the wife he'd lost and the woman he'd found. 3 little girls wrote a note asking a nurse to help their lonely father. Grace showed up on Christmas Eve when I was hiding in my office, drowning in grief and work, losing precious time with my daughters. She taught me how to honor Caroline's memory while keeping living, how to be present for my girls, how to build traditions that acknowledge loss while embracing joy. Grace didn't try to replace Caroline or erase our grief. She just reminded us that loving someone means keeping their memory alive while choosing to keep our hearts open to new love. I promise to keep being present for our daughters, to build a life that honors both past and present, and to never forget that sometimes the greatest gift is showing up when someone needs you, especially when it would be easier to stay away. Grace's vows reflected the same understanding. 3 little girls left me a note asking for help with their lonely father. I could have ignored it. Instead, I showed up at a CEO's office on Christmas Eve with cookies and a note from his daughters. Alex, you were drowning in grief and using work to avoid pain. Your daughters could see it even when you couldn't. They asked for help because they loved you enough to be brave. You taught me that honoring the dead means living fully for those still here. That being a parent means being present, even when it hurts. That the best families are built not on perfection, but on the courage to keep trying. I promise to honor Caroline's memory while building our future. To love your daughters as they deserve while never trying to replace their mother. And to keep showing up when you need meat, because that's what the note asked me to do. And it's what I'll keep doing forever. The nurse who'd found a note in her scrub's pocket discovered something more valuable than any professional boundary. That 3 little girls' plea for help led to a family healing. That the CEO, drowning in grief, needed someone to show up with cookies and compassion. And that sometimes the most important medicine isn't administered in hospitals, but in living rooms where broken families learn to celebrate Christmas again. Proving that the best interventions come not from doctors, but from people brave enough to answer a crayon note asking for help. Showing up when they're needed most. Bringing love to those who've forgotten how to find it on their own. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below about someone who showed up for you when you needed them most. Your stories inspire us all.